This is mostly my quarantine beard. The wife is not real happy with it, but we'll see what we get out of it and how long we're in this for. So
I
we'll see.
I
It's getting
can't
nice
bring
and thick.
myself to do it. I have to shave every like 2 to 3 days. I can't do the scruff and stuff like that. It just doesn't work for me. But
Nice. My mom. Yeah.
go for it.
I say my mom quickly pointed out that she saw a few grays in it. So, but that's all part of the process.
I wish I had enough hair. That's the reason why I wear a hat all the time. Is I wish I had enough hair to actually have gray hairs, but I'm going bald right now, so I wear the hat all the time. I'm
Yeah,
so common.
that's. I cut my hair for you today.
Oh, perfect, perfect. Well, in case you guys haven't seen the scrolling name at the bottom, we are here with Coach Brian Winnie. Brian, great to have you.
You as well.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
awesome. Yep, yep. And we're going to talk today about a lot of things. You're heavily involved in a lot of coaching right now. I know you help with Kenosha. You help the Bandits. You're with the Admirals, and you even do some coaching for me with the Hockey Factory as well. So you wear a lot of hats and you play a lot of roles. But before we get into your coaching history, can you give me a little bit of background on your playing history?
Yeah, sure. So I am a Madison guy by nature.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up playing my youth hockey in Madison with the Madison Patriots for the most part. I did start my learn to skate or Devos, depending on how people are looking at it, with the old Westmoreland Saints that I don't believe exist anymore, but I have seen a few pictures of myself in a Saints jersey when I was little. But grew up for the most part in the Madison Patriot organization and had a lot of great times playing there. Played at Hartmeyer. I was fortunate enough to spend a number of my years playing for Bob Suter off that '80 Olympic team. So I grew up with him and his boys, who a lot of the viewers may recognize him or know the family of sorts. So, yep, grew up through Madison, and then I went on to play my high school years at Monona Grove High School on the east side of Madison. And then after that, I was lightly recruited, I will call it, and went to go play my college hockey at Lawrence University up in Appleton, which is where I was lucky enough to meet you.
Yep, yep, yep. You were a senior when I was a freshman, and so I learned a lot of stuff from you, and that's one of the reasons why I'm happy to have you on right now. I don't even know if you remember it, but with our house and things like that, you were considered my like. I think it was we were in that like. I think they called it a family or something like that with our
Yeah.
fraternity. But you were in that with me, so you were a guy that really helped me along the process like that too, and kind of welcomed me into Lawrence and things like that too. So thank you for that. Um,
Yeah.
in addition to that, like I said, you wear a lot of hats with coaching. Can you give us
Yep.
some of your coaching history and where you're currently coaching right now?
Sure. So I actually started coaching and kind of got my feet wet a little bit during some of the summers of college.
Mm-hmm.
I was working back in Madison, doing other side summer jobs a lot of college kids did, and then I don't even know how I got into it, but somehow myself and a handful of friends we ended up coaching a few teams in a summer league over at MIA on the west side of Madison. I don't even remember what age. I think it was maybe Pee Wee's Bantams,
Yep.
and I was coaching a team, and I had friends coaching another team. I maybe had I don't know the blue team or
Yeah.
the yellow team or something like that, and it was just kind of a Madison league of sorts that just played maybe a handful of games on the west side. So that's where I got my first taste of it, and then from there, I really didn't do a whole lot after college. I did not have kids right away. Um, so I really kind of hung up the skates for about 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and I got back into playing men's league a bit. Then of course I ended up having kids, and once the kids came on, then I started getting back into it pretty heavily.
Yeah.
I did not jump into it lightly in a sense. I ended up helping out with some of the Devo programs in Kenosha, and then quickly came to work with the Wisconsin Jets, which for the people that don't know who the Wisconsin Jets are, they are the AAU program that runs out of the Kenosha Ice Arena and kind of sister program with the Kenosha Comets. So Worked there as a coach for the first year, and then I became the hockey director there for the last 4 or 5 years, something like that. I gave up that role last year as I just moved on to other things and didn't have the time to focus my dedication there. That was through the Wisconsin Jets. Then I coached a couple years at the Kenosha Comets, and then after that, I became, as I kind of deemed it in some of my bio, special assistant with some of the Vernon Hills Ice Dogs. Help them where needed with a lot of their players, still helping them occasionally. But during that whole time, I also helped found the Wisconsin Bandits, which is a development group very similar to what Hockey Factory is, just in the southeast part of the state and whatnot. So we work with that group a lot, and a lot of kids in the area. I think we have something about 5 or 6 different organizations that work with us, or that we work with throughout the year and whatnot. From there, this last year, I helped out with the '09 Milwaukee Junior Admirals. I helped out a lot with the defense and goalies, and then also, which it wasn't really in the plan or the works, I became one of the assistants on the Kenosha Thunder high school hockey team.
Okay. And that's it. That's a lot of teams, correct?
Yeah, say that again.
That's it. That's all. I mean, that's a ton of teams right now, right?
Yeah, well, they don't. The Admirals and the high school team overlap for the most part. My youngest son is on the Admirals team, and
Yep.
the high school team works out mostly just with my schedule. I work at home a fair amount with work regularly, not obviously with this quarantine, but I work from home a lot, and the rink is just a couple miles from my house, so I was able to work from home, head over to practice, and then often headed up to Milwaukee for the other practice right afterwards.
Isn't it interesting as you get into coaching and stuff like that, like where you find the time to coach all the teams that you do? I mean, like you've just listed off a plethora of teams. Like it's just amazing how people find the time.
Yeah, I'm not home a lot during the winter. I get home, it seems like a lot of games or a lot of nights at 9, 10. Luckily, my wife is very accepting of that, the hockey season.
Yep.
And so I do my best to make sure that I do get to spend the time at home. And most importantly, my daughter, who doesn't get to see me a lot, I make sure we go out on a good amount of daddy-daughter dates during the hockey season, because she doesn't get a ton of dad time during the winter.
Well, with all the teams you coach, we ask this question quite a bit, but can you give me the first 5 minutes of your practice?
Yeah, on a typical practice. So if I back up one, I'm an assistant on most of these teams. I'm not head coaches, which allows me a little bit more flexibility than maybe the head coach. But when I have been the head coach on a few of them, I have often led with some of the things like Coach Rulli said in your last interview, and make sure the coaches' stuff is planned ahead of time, make sure that practice is ready. Even went as far as taking my team, making sure they were ready to go and dress for practice 5 or 10 minutes beforehand, so that we could go into. So when we hit the ice, we were ready to go, and we weren't delaying or kind of messing around, and that way we could go from drill to drill pretty quick. But once we actually got on the ice, my first 5 minutes I left as complete free time, and what I mean by that is I really encourage kids to get a puck on their stick and go do really whatever they want. Go have fun. Go practice on that drop pass between the legs to your buddy, that sweet dangle you've been working on or you saw on YouTube. We'll have the goalies, maybe the goalies step in net. If we have multiple goalies, maybe one's in, have the other goalie kind of stick handling and skating around. Really the only restriction I had on the kids was you had to keep your feet moving, you had to keep skating. So I wanted them to really kind of use their brain and be creative and have fun with it. And then a lot of that started with one of my high school buddies, one of my best friends in the state, Jamie and I. We would go through at the beginning of our high school practices and really just pass to each other. I mean, they were awkward, goofy passes, things that never really happened in the game, but it made me more comfortable for that. And so when I got into coaching and I was learning from a lot of other coaches, I really liked the way that allowed the kids to think and kind of grow up. So that's a lot of what I do in my first 5 minutes is give them that freedom.
Yep.
Also gives them, especially on the younger side, because I do coach a lot of the younger kids outside of high school. So it gives the kids a few minutes to burn off that I call it locker room energy,
Yep.
because I know you think when the kids get into the locker room, especially the younger ones, that they've not talked to anybody during the entire day, and they need to talk to everyone and get every conversation in the 15, 20 minutes that they're in there before they
Yep.
get on the ice. So it definitely brings the attention
No.
span back into things. So how about you? I haven't got to see a lot of your individual practices. How do you start off your first couple of
Nothing like being put on the spot. um, um, you know, I,
I'm always learning. I like to know.
yeah, I'm glad you brought it up because it's one of the things that it's one of the reasons why I always ask the question, and I always try to get that from my coaches because I love learning what coaches do out there, and I value the first 5 minutes of practice. Like to me, that first 5 minutes of practice, like it sets the tone for the rest of the practice, and for
Yeah.
that most part, it sets the tone for the next practice as well. For me personally, though, when I get on the ice, it's all about moving, excitement, hustle, and things like that. I like that you said you allow your kids the freedom to do things like that. That brings excitement, allows them to want to get out of the locker room. And for me, that's where the
Mhm.
first 5 minutes of practice is the most important because we want the kids ready to go when they get on the ice. And not only do we
Yep.
want them ready to go, but we want them to know that for the next 20, 30, 20 to 50 minutes, it's going to be hard work. It's going to be fun. But yeah, I love getting the kids out there, moving and excitement. But the one thing that I always find interesting about the first 5 minutes of practice, and it's something as a coach you hear other coaches talk about, and I kind of like shake my head sometimes when I talk to coaches. They say, "Oh, the kids were dead today. They didn't have it." And I understand sometimes kids have extracurricular things that they'll be on their mind for practices and stuff like that. But generally, it's not all 15 of them or 16 of them are having something outside of it. So I always tell coaches and stuff like that, it's about preparation that first 5 minutes. Because if you want a good practice, that first 5 minutes starts with two things. And it starts with the preparation, of your demeanor in the locker room with the kids, how you are when your first 5 minutes when you get on the ice. Do you have like the side lean going, like just leaning on the bench, talking to your other coaches, talking about your day and things like that? Because
Yep.
if you're not setting the tone for your kids, then they're not going to set the tone by themselves. So that's one of the reasons things I do is I want my kids moving. I want them excited, and I want to be
Yep.
moving excited. If our coaches are moving and we're excited with the kids, that's why we play the coaches versus kids game because it gets us excited,
Yep.
gets them excited, gets that tone set, excitement going, gets kids moving right away. But the other thing that I find it's important about the first 5 minutes of practice, and not a lot of coaches think about, is it's the first 5 minutes of your practice is also dictated by the last 5 minutes of your interactions with the kids from the previous practice or game. And what I mean
Hmm.
by that is a lot of kids, they're excited to come to the rink, they're excited to play. But if you leave your locker room from the last game and your demeanor is poor, where you're saying, like you better watch, practice is going to be rough next game, like the kid doesn't want to come to
Right.
that, you know what I mean? And that's where I think
Yep.
that the preparation of letting the kids know that the practice we're going to is going to be exciting, it's going to be fun, and we're going to work. Like that's determined the last 5 minutes of your last interaction with kids because they'll remember that. And if your last demeanor and your interaction with the kids are positive, it's ready to go, it's we're going to be moving and fun, then no matter what happened in that weekend's games or what happened in that last practice, they know that first 5 minutes is going to be fast, it's going to be fun, which will set the tone for the remainder of the practice. And that's
Right.
why I always say your first 5 minutes sets the tone of the next 55, 1 hour, whatever you have. And so if you want a good practice, set it in the first 5 minutes. So little long way to
Yeah.
go, but no, that's kind of what I have.
Yeah.
But and then give me going off of that, give me your last 5 minutes of practice.
Sure. Sure. So, it kind of feeds into what you're saying that,
Yeah.
a lot of the tone and things like that.
Yeah.
I'll tend to read the practice, try and see kind of where the kids are going with it. If we had a great practice, actually, let me step back.
Yeah.
It also depends on what we have coming up that week and when that practice is. If it's a Monday practice, we don't, maybe we've got another practice on Wednesday. The ending of that practice might be different than if it was a Wednesday or Thursday practice. We have a game on Friday, Saturday, whatever it might be. But they tend to vary in between something fun, a game of some sort, that obviously incorporates ideally something that we worked on earlier in the practice.
Yep.
Otherwise, I'd like to put in some of the skating techniques towards the end of practice. I tend to look at that as more of a look. Our bodies are tired, our brains are tired at this point. What can we do now to kind of instill some of that good technique that maybe goes away when we're tired, when it's the third period and things like that. So occasionally we'll do things like edge work and lengthening that stride back out and things like that maybe we kind of gave up or our bodies or their bodies tended to forget during that practice, and just kind of resets them as we head off the ice, until the next session.
Yep. Now, you gotta refresh my memory here because it's been about 15 years. But the last 5 to 10 minutes of practice at college on Thursday nights with Coach Rulli at Lawrence, we played lemon, apple, orange. Do you remember that? It was that shootout game where the winners got the orange, the losers got the lemon. How many times did you pull down the lemon?
Man, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the game. I'll be honest. You're putting me on the spot, and I'm not a good one for this. This is what I usually default to our former teammate, Brent Stu Manning. He's the one that has the memory like a steel trap, and it reminds me of these things. Was it? I'm gonna make myself sound bad here. Was the lemon the bad side?
Yeah,
Because
lemon was the bad. Lemon was the bad. It's the one you didn't want.
I was probably on the bad side a lot.
Okay.
I've got hands of stone, and I found out as I get older and I try and do that, my brain thinks I've got hands of cane, and yet they're much much worse than that.
Sounds good.
So I don't know, but I definitely was not on the top of that. But we had fun, and got a few by them at the time. Yeah. So.
And then you brought up, when you grew up playing hockey and stuff like that. And can you give us an example, or how much do you think the game has changed from when we played it growing up to where it's at right now?
Man, there's a lot more skill involved today. A lot more skill. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, especially in the hands.
Yep.
Obviously, I mentioned I didn't have them. I remember you were pretty solid when you came up, but just the pure skill of these players, and even like what we see today and versus what we even saw 5 years ago in the NHL, it's completely different. But the pure skill is a lot different. When I grew up, checking was still a huge thing and a big thing, and that's kind of what I personally gravitated to when I was a player. I was the little guy who hit like a ton of bricks and had no fear of going after guys, and that's kind of where I made my money as a player.
Yep.
But we don't really see that today. It's the physical aspect is in the game. Obviously, USA Hockey has bumped that physical piece up to the Bantam level, so it's another 2 years later than when I did it, and probably yourself.
Yep.
And that's, I can't say that's out of the game, but it's definitely less and less important and focused on less. Whereas the skill has gotten so much better, and like I said, speed as well. I was thinking about this when you kind of gave me a potential set of questions. One thing I don't remember ever doing as a player is I don't remember ever really working on a lot of edge work and skating skills and things like that. Like when we became better skaters, it was hitting those summer camps, the Laura Stam, the Robbie Glantz, for the Madison guys, the guys heading to the Mark Johnson camps and things like that. That's where we did the power skating and the technique stuff. But that stuff was never really worked on. It was kind of basic drills. Here's 5 drills. This is what we're going to do for the practice, and that was about it. And I think a lot of that's kind of shaped how I work and some of that today. Is I'm a details and a technique guy. I don't like to do drills for 10 minutes and just with the hopes of, hey, by the time they do it 10 times, they're going to get it right. I'd rather work on it 5 times and make sure it's right from time number 1. As they go through it, doesn't do a lot of good to do it wrong 100 times when you only do it right 2. To be more efficient on some of those things. But that's a lot of what I see in the game. It's just the pure skill, and an individual skill for that matter is way better now than it's ever been by far.
Well, with the game evolving and becoming more individual skills, as coaches, we've had to evolve as well. We've had to go from less system practices, orientated toward 2-1-2s and things like that. And our practices are getting more involved with individual skills. And as coaches, we're evolving too and becoming better coaches. For your typical practices, though, how much time do you want devoted towards individual skills as opposed to team play?
Um, I don't know if it's an individual time period, but I think you need to have at least a third of the
Yeah.
practice. I guess it kind of depends on the age level, right? I think the individual skill stuff is more important at the younger ages than it is
Yeah.
at the older age. Again, that's with the hope that those older kids had that at the younger age.
Yeah.
But that's something like take our high school team this year. A lot of that was kind of missing. There were some things out there that should have been worked on when they were younger skaters and things like that we had to take a step back at and say, look, okay, we thought we were here with our knowledge and things like that, but we needed to step back and kind of revisit some of these to make this work better. Again, that's just, you can't run crazy systems, or you can't run different strategies if you don't have the core skills. And that core skill in the individual stuff is the skating and the stick handling and transitions and crossovers and things like that. And anyone that wants to jump into a practice and just quick run on gameplay and things like that, like, just not doing it right. Like, you're not gaining the thing. So,
and that's a great point. It's a great point you brought up about having to take a step back, because that's one of the things that sometimes, as youth coaches in club hockey, you get a new team almost every year, depending on the age groups that go up from squirts, peewees, and bantams. And you have to change what you do every year. And you can't just automatically jump into running systems, things like that, because sometimes as kids, they don't have the skill sets to run what they're needed to be run. That's one of the things I find funny about, coaches that are trying to implement systems. You have to look at the talent level of your team before you can actually go out there and run a system. If your team can't make a 10-foot, if your team can't make a 10-foot pass very well, then how are you supposed to run like a breakout where you're hitting the far side winger? Like, it's just not going to happen, right? So look at the skill sets, and then once you start realizing what you want to do, develop those skills before you start implementing the systems, and you're going to see a world of difference in those skaters.
Right. And I'd also add to that, I've seen other coaches that have been coaching a long time, and they're great coaches. They're great with individual things, but I've seen them where they've been coaching for 10 years and like, oh, well, here we are. This is December 15th. This is practice number 23. We must be doing this.
Yeah.
But maybe this year you're on your booklet that says this is practice number 23, but maybe the team's ability is where you were on practice number 15. Like, that's just where you are, and that's who they are, and that's fine. But maybe they're beyond that. Maybe the December practice that you think you're going to be running is what you actually thought you would be running in January. Like, you got to have the ability to adapt and change and go with what your team has. You're just going by a strict regimen of what you think is right or what you had done in the past. You can't stick with that stuff. You have to be able to adapt as a coach.
And this season, and you've talked about it, that you've had a lot of responsibility as an assistant coach on some of these teams.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me some of the roles and responsibilities that you think is good for head coaches to give down to the assistant coaches for practices?
So I think it's important that you look at the assistant coach as an equal in a sense. They're just as engaged and just as involved in a lot of these teams. And if you're a one-man show just kind of running things, I think you're missing out on grabbing a couple of things. In the groups that I work with, it's trust is put into the assistant coaches, via the head coach or whatnot, to just run with what they believe that needs to get done and what those players might need. So, I think their roles, while it might be defined as maybe he's the offensive guy and you're the defensive guy and things like that, I think you need to all work together and kind of see what's out there. Starting, going back to, you need to be on the same page to begin with. Because if you're not on the same page as a staff, you're kind of your own mini team within the team. to where you guys need to be understanding each other and preaching the same story. And then when you go out and you break into maybe the offensive coach, defensive coach, and even goaltenders for that matter, that you are teaching the same thing, and maybe you're seeing things different and whatnot. So I look at it as three equal coaches for the most part. The head coach is just kind of the guy that gets to make the final decision, and the one that gets to talk to the refs in the end. So.
And that's when I coach my teams, I usually have 2 to 3 assistant coaches with me each time. And one of my big things with my assistant coaches is I let them know their roles going into each practice, going into each game, things I want them to look for, stuff like that. But I also expect a lot out of my assistant coaches in the same way as what you said there. Like I expect my assistant coaches to make those calls to change things. I don't want to have to tell them all the time, hey, change that D pair up or something like that. Like for me, the role and responsibility of an assistant coach is like you said. I love the fact that they are equals to us. But the biggest thing is I want my assistant coaches to know that their responsibility to make the changes. If they're seeing something in practice that's not working, say something. Don't just sit on the boards and tell me 5 minutes afterwards. Like jump in, get engaged, let me know now. Because that's one of my big pet peeves with coaching is, after something happens or after a game happens, like, that D pairing wasn't working. And I'm going to be looked down like, why didn't you change it? What are you doing? You didn't see it was working. I wasn't paying that close attention. Change it next time. Like, come on now.
Yeah. Well, there's other things too. I mean, this last year, I've seen, on both the teams I was on the bench for this year, a lot of it was, there's numerous times where even though, in fact, on one team I run the defense and the goalies, and the other team I run the forwards, I might see something as a defensive coach that the forwards are doing that the offensive coach didn't see. And it's communicating down the bench either direction. Hey, did you see, coach, did you see, so-and-so's, constantly pivoting the wrong direction on their transition, in the corners or something like that, and just letting them know, because maybe they're not seeing it. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But, having that ability and being able to step in and work together and things like that. So,
yeah. And it's funny because that's also the sign of a good head coach, though, too, that he's able to take that, not criticism, but he's able to take that advice and he's able to effectively communicate that to players or allow his assistant coaches that role and that freedom to do those things. Because that's one of the problems you've seen with teams sometimes, that their assistant coaches, they're there just opening up a door or something like that. But a good head coach has communication with his assistant coaches. He also allows them the opportunity and the responsibility to make those changes. So it's one of the great things about, it's sometimes people say, I'm just an assistant coach. No, you're a coach, man. You gotta act like one too. So, I want to talk a little bit about successful teams and things like that. Can you give me an example or a team that you've been on that's been successful, and then tell me why that team was successful?
Sure. So when I thought about this, the team that came to mind first and foremost was my high school team, and certainly my senior year. We were ranked second in the state. We had the whole undefeated record going. Ironically, as I was thinking about this, we did tie one team, and I think ironically it was a Fond du Lac team. So in your hood, I think it was. I don't remember who it was, but if it was Springs or someone else. But we did tie a team, so I think we were like 21-0-1 or something like that. But anyhow, it was that team, and we were. I think we're really successful because we had depth, and we've played together a long time. You mentioned it earlier. A lot of the youth teams, you tend to only have the kids together for a year or two, or every other year, depending on how things fall with birth years. But we had a lot of kids in the community that skated together, on the east side of Madison. We grew up together. We were really good friends, not just teammates. We were really good friends outside of hockey. We played hockey together. We played soccer together. We played tennis together. We did everything together. And so by the time we hit high school, and I think I played 3 years of high school hockey. We had been playing together for so long that we knew so much about each other that we knew where we were going to be on the ice when it happened. So with that, we had a lot of depth with the team. We had our top line scorers. We had the guys that we counted on every game for goals. with our secondary guys and our third line grinders and things like that. We had all the roles filled. We had a solid D. We had a good set of goaltenders and things like that. So I think it was the depth, and the depth was really created and strengthened by us playing together a lot, and honestly being really good friends um, outside of the rink. So we knew each other and we hung out all the time, and it was just what we did as a group. So, and a lot of us are still really close friends here today. So
You go back even to like last season's Stanley Cup champion with the St. Louis Blues, and they were last place in January. And the one thing you kept hearing about over and over and over and over again, it was that one the team knew they were talented, but also it was the locker
mhm.
room, right? And how close that locker room was, and how all the guys looked out for each other, how they were all one unit, right? And I think that's kind of what you're getting at right now is that like you guys had that. You guys had the locker room. You had the camaraderie. You had the boys all believing in one thing, and that's incredibly important when it comes to successful teams. And
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
yeah, aside from having a talent that makes a successful team, um, what one character thing do you look for to have that team? If you couldn't have talent, what's the next thing you want of your team? Sorry.
Effort. The effort.
Hello.
You see it on quotes and stuff every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take the kid that's gonna work their butt off all day long over talent, and more importantly, a kid that's coachable.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
coachability and effort are my one and two. Talent is third,
Mhm.
and the best player to me is one that has all three.
Okay.
So those are absolutely the most important. I've seen over my years of coaching here, I've seen every bit of it. Every bit of it. I'll be honest, I don't know if I've ever seen
Mhm.
that perfect player, in my opinion, yet. That's coachable.
Yeah.
That's 100% coachable. Gives effort every single game, all time, and has the talent. So, um,
Yeah.
and I think if you look out there, you'll see that those kids that do make it, to the next level, after the next level, after the next level, are those kids that have that, um, those three primary traits. Um,
You bring up
in there.
effort.
So,
It's funny because effort's one of those things that allows kids not to quit.
mhm.
And have you ever ran into somebody or a team that just won't quit? Like they're impossible to play against. They're hard, they're tough, and it's just like
Mhm.
it's that effort that allows them not to quit that makes them impossible. And that's what if you don't have, I mean, if you're not the most talented team, but you have a team that competes and has the effort, and you're going to go far. Um,
Yeah.
um, as we're getting close to wrapping this up now, one of the questions we have is, as being a coach and being involved as many of the teams as you are, what's the most rewarding part about being a coach for you?
The most rewarding part, I would probably say, is when the light bulb goes off for the
Yep.
kids, right? When it's a bit of that aha moment, I kind of call
Mhm.
it, where they see that success, and something that you've been trying to preach to them all season long, or all week long, whatever it is, and they finally try it and it works. It's like, oh, right, and they come back and they look at you, and you ask them, say, oh, so you did what we just talked about, and I've been trying to get you to do for 2 weeks. Yeah, well, how did it work out? Good. And they always have that side smirk on their face. It's like, I told you. It's like, okay, now let's take that and let's build on that and let's keep going. So that's one of the parts I love the most,
Mhm.
with kids. I had a kid on the ads this year who we were working with just a give and go, a real active skating defenseman and things like that. And I was talking with him. Look, I love the fact that you like to go coast to coast, and even to the point where I started yelling at him. I'm like, look, you got to start, if you're going to go and you've got guys that are open up in front of you, up the ice, use them in a give and go. The people won't know what to do or how to work around with you. I said, you got to try it. And I was hammering them, and even to the point where I kind of got on him, like, look, you're just not playing smart. Like, fantastic. I'm glad you got a shot, and maybe you even scored that time. But when they did it, and then they kind of saw how it opened up the game for them, came back to the bench. I kind of gave him a big hug. I'm like, look, see, like,
Yeah.
that's what I've been trying to teach you, and that's what I've been trying to do for you, and try and help you. You can't just you're just not a great player if all you think that matters are goals and getting it down to the other end because dad's yelling go 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 kind of thing. So.
And then, do you have any advice for some youth hockey parents out there right now?
There's always the cliches of, enjoy the time, enjoy the rides to practice and things like that. When I look at some of the parents, the biggest thing I would probably give to parents would be understand what's going on in the team. And I say that because there's nothing more annoying than hearing parents yell from the stands something that's contradictory to what the coach is telling them. Um, I've been on both sides of the bench and in the stands, and my ultimate favorite is when there's 30 seconds left and the mom down two rows in front of you is yelling, shoot, shoot. Like, why? That's not what we're teaching. And little Billy can hear you. So I would say, as a hockey parent, if you're going to get into this and you're going to take it seriously, and your kids are taking it seriously, understand what the coach is teaching, whether that's chatting with the coach and things like that, or it's, asking your player, like, okay, well, what does coach want you to do? Is it for a breakout, or if you're attacking? If you don't know what a breakout or a zone entry or something is, then ask. Go to YouTube or something like that. But the more that you understand the game as a parent, and the more that you understand it as a fan, the better you'll appreciate what's going on. And I think the better relationship you'll have with your kid too, because you get a lot of these Cadillac coaches, as I like the term, where people are talking to their kids on the way home, or yelling at this, you need to do this and that. It's like, well, maybe the coach told them to do something different. Right. Yep. So now the kids got it coming in both ears, right? They got mom or dad in this year, and coach in this year, and whatnot. So I would say my tip, coming from a coach who's also a dad and a former player, is understand what's going on, and make sure that then what you're yelling from the stands is appropriate in terms of the game. Yeah. Versus kind of sounding stupid, to be honest.
So. Yeah, and that's totally true. And that's one of the things too, is that for new parents out there too, I know that sometimes you get this, you get a level of uncertainty what's going on. And I always tell parents, like, if you have a question, just ask, please, because I'd rather have you understand what I'm trying to teach than having one, someone else telling you the wrong thing, or two, you assuming something else. And that's, to me, is where a lot of the discrepancy and the void is between coaches and parents sometimes. And that can create a little line between us. And I don't like having that line. I like to have that open communication with parents, and I invite parents to come, listen to what I'm teaching. This is what I'm trying to get you to understand right now. And as soon as more parents start understanding that, the easier it is for that line to go away, and then for us to have communication. And then I also love the fact that you take it one step further with parents. And once they start understanding what you're doing, then they can start understanding it to their kids and better explaining it to their kids. And then they can even get involved in the conversation of how to better things. And there's a lot of parents I know out there that have given me tips on things that I don't see, and something happened in the game. I'm like, oh, good point. But they knew what I was doing. They knew that what I was trying to instill in the kids. And then they saw it from a vantage point that I hadn't seen. And that helps me as a coach. But it's because that communication's there.
Right.
And last question for you. I ask it every last time. I want you to go back 20-something years, and I want you to talk to a 12, 13-year-old Brian Winnie, and you can give him one piece of advice. What would that advice be?
It was enjoy the game. And enjoy the game and have fun. I know you said 12, 13-year-old. The thing that I kind of equated to a little bit differently, in the sense of that age of a kid. Although I will say I did like Coach Rulli's comments last week of better hands. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I have stone hands. They're awful. And I wish I would have had better hands. We didn't have YouTube and all that fun stuff back then. Yeah. But my biggest thing that I would say to a younger player is play the game as long as you can. Love the game, enjoy it. I never went and played juniors. I don't know if that would have made me any better, things like that. But keep playing the game. If you can play hockey in college, whether it be a club team, an intramurals team, the varsity team, whatever it is, if you can keep playing and it fits in your schedule, you have to keep playing the game. Keep playing the game. Keep enjoying it. As long as you love it, keep going. If you think you can go, try and play at another level, go try.
Yep.
Go try. There's plenty of time in life to where you can sit behind a cubicle and some computer monitors or swinging a hammer, whatever it might be. There's plenty of time to do that stuff in your life. But go enjoy the game as a kid while you have the time and whatnot as much as you can. And go keep playing, see what happens.
Yeah,
I'm still waiting to be drafted, but it hasn't happened yet.
I think that's an awesome point because I talk to a lot of coaches, and we at my rink here we have an NCAA team, we have an NCAA men's and women's team, and then we also have an ACHA team at our rink. And one of the things is that I understand that not every kid's going to make the NCAA. You know, we were fortunate that we were able to play 4 years of NCAA hockey, experience what it's like, and it was amazing. But sometimes that doesn't work out for some kids, and then they think the dream's over. But I always tell kids it's not over. Like, there are plenty of great opportunities for you at the ACHA level. Like, and maybe you don't even have to play ACHA. Maybe it's intramurals. But the thing is, like, you shouldn't quit the game just because you didn't reach what you thought your goal was. Like, if I would have quit because I didn't make the NHL, well, I would have missed out on 4 great years at Lawrence. And I tell kids, like, maybe your goal was NCAA D3. You don't hit it, go ACHA. If it's not ACHA, go play your intramurals. The biggest thing is you play the game. You play the game because it's fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Play the game. That's what matters. You play to have fun. You play the game.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
So that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have any last things you'd like to add or anything else like that?
I don't. Not off the top of my mind here. I appreciate the time to sit down and chat with you. It's always fun to catch up on a hockey level and a personal level. We've been friends for a long time, and we work together a lot. So it's always good and fun to get together. And I appreciate the time.
Yep. Well, everybody, that's it for today's episode. We'll be downloading it on our Facebook Live page, so you can check it out in a little bit. But Brian, thanks again for coming out, and best of luck to you.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.